My name is Dani Jameson. I'm now 15 years old. Therese Jameson was my mom. I'm giving this statement because she was murdered. Now I'm stuck with juvenile delinquents at the county detention center waiting for foster parents to take me, if anyone even wants me. Most people want younger kids though, not a teenager like me. Anything would be better than this, except living in a shelter, some of which are really awful. My mom and I were homeless right before she was killed. There's no way Ronald Jameson, my mom's husband, and my stepdad would take me, even if I knew where he was. The whole reason my mom and I became homeless in the first place is because he abandoned us and left town with another woman in spring 2004. Without two incomes, my mom couldn't afford rent, food, medication, and all our other bills by herself with a minimum wage job at the Mega Mart. So, we were evicted on August 2nd, 2004, from our 3-room apartment and had to stay in the Circle of Hope shelter downtown. We were new to Barrister because my stepdad was always moving, so we didn't even have friends to stay with. The shelter was crowded. Mom soon lost her job at Mega Mart because the buses didn't run there from the shelter. We searched and searched and searched for a cheap apartment but couldn't find one. There is practically no public housing in Barrister, and it's too dangerous in any event. She tried to get low-income housing vouchers, but the government only doles out so many. There's a huge waiting list. I remember her telling me there were about 3,000 qualified households in line in front of us to get vouchers in Barrister County. We didn't even care about heat or electricity. We could do without that. We even went without food to save money for rent, and my mom stopped taking her asthma medication. Like my mom said, it's impossible to afford even the essentials on $5.15 per hour. I wanted to try and get a job to help with the bills, but my mom wouldn't let me. She said I needed to go to school. I hate school. I don't even have any friends, and the other kids make fun of me because I lived in a shelter. Before my stepdad left, I had no idea how many homeless people there were, especially kids. I was really embarrassed that we had to stay at the shelter, but it was better than the street. After being in there for a few days, I realized there were lots of people in the same predicament my mom and I were in. Although there were some junkies and mentally ill folk, most of the people at the shelter were just like my mom. They wanted to work, or actually were working, but still couldn't afford an apartment or utilities or gas for a car, even if they had one. I hated the shelter, but the alternative was the street. In fact, I almost got us kicked out of the shelter at the end of August because I got into a fight. It was during the first week of school, but I had cut classes and was wandering around downtown. This kid named Big Dog started making fun of me. He's the head of this gang that beats up homeless people downtown for no reason. I started walking away, but he tripped me from behind. He looked like he wanted to attack me, so I started running. He caught up with me as I got to the shelter door and started shoving me. I pulled out my pepper spray and maced him. I carried it with me everywhere. When you live on the street, a lot of people harass you, and you need to be able to defend yourself. He was rubbing his eyes and yelling that he was going to get me and all the other shelter cockroaches. He fell to the ground, and I started screaming at him and kicking him. I guess I didn't really need to kick him, but he made me really mad. I'm tired of being hassled. I had a run-in with Big Dog a few months earlier. I went with my mom to the check cashing place to cash her Mega Mart paycheck. She had no bank account, of course. Big Dog and his gang were hanging out there and told Mom and I they liked to wait for some poor slob to cash their welfare disability check and then take their money. I also overheard Big Dog bragging about how he liked to get homeless people drunk to make them even easier targets. He told his buddies he had bought this poor soul liquor last winter and he got drunk and froze to death. The day after my fight with Big Dog, I went into the shelter office and took some money. I know they suspected me because somebody discovered it was missing and asked me about it. I denied the whole thing. I told them they miscounted the money. It's not hard to steal, and I've only gotten caught one time. I don't know exactly how many times I've taken things, but several for sure. Maybe that's wrong, but if no one will help you, you have to help yourself. I could make excuses, but it's as simple as we needed the money to buy food. Anyway, after they suspected me of theft, I got in big trouble with my mom and with Kim Sanchez, a social worker at Circle of Hope. She told me I had one more strike, and if I screwed up again, she would have to kick us out to another shelter, and if that didn't work out, I would be placed in foster care. That kind of woke me up. Mom is, or was, pretty much all I had. Anyway, Kim wrote up the incidents and gave copies to me and Mom. In mid-September, Mom got a job at the Terrible Towel with the help of Kim Sanchez. That's a small cafe downtown. Kim let my mom use her address on the employment application. I don't know if you've ever tried to get a job without having an address, but I can tell you it's basically impossible. My mom must have filled out 30 applications while we were in the shelter, and her interviews always ended right after she explained why she didn't have an address. We got really lucky because just about the same time, we found an apartment to rent. Actually, it was just 2 rooms over a garage. The rooms were really small and only had 1 window. That's probably why Mom could afford it, but it was better than the shelter. Mom was able to work 6 days per week and made some pretty good tips, but she seemed more worried than usual. She just seemed like something was wrong. It's just a feeling I got. Then one day, I'd say sometime in October, we ran into Kim, and my mom told Kim that T. Barry Olson was mixing horse meat with the beef at the cafe to cut costs. Kim said to report it to the health authorities, but my mom later told me she was too scared to do that, even though she said she had proof Olson was receiving horse meat off the delivery truck. On October 29th, my mom and her boss Olson got into a fight. I walked with my mom to work that morning. I would usually walk with my mom to work and then go to school after she went into the cafe. That day, I really was going to go to school, but then I saw a really cool bike that I really liked chained up outside the restaurant. I went over to look at it when I heard loud voices inside the restaurant. One of the voices was my mom's and the other was Olson's. I looked through the front window at the restaurant and I could tell my mom and Olson were arguing. They both looked really ticked off and my mom sounded upset. I couldn't hear exactly what she was saying, but I did hear her in a loud voice tell Olson that she knew about the horse meat and Wilbur. Then, when my mom came back outside, she told me that Olson had fired her and didn't even give her the paycheck she had coming.